Welcome to the Mastering Commercial Real Estate Podcast, the show where we dive deep with top investors, operators, and industry pros to uncover how they're building wealth and creating real impact through commercial real estate. I'm your host, Corey Mortensen, capital raiser, commercial investor, and founder of 19 Holdings. Whether you're just getting started or looking to level up, this podcast is your go-to for real insights and actionable strategies. If you enjoyed the show, please hit that like button, leave a quick review, and share it with someone who should be listening. If you've got feedback or ideas to improve the show, I'm always open, and I want to make this better for all you listeners. If you're ready to start building wealth passively through commercial real estate, visit 19holdings.com. That's ONE-9 Holdings to learn more and join our investor list. Enjoy this episode. All right, everybody. Hey, thanks for tuning in to the latest episode of the Mastering Commercial Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Corey Mortensen, and today I am very excited to announce our capstone episode, our finale to the season. We have somebody that I have personally followed and been inspired by for many years, and we've corresponded here and there in the past, but I'm very excited to sit down face-to-face with our guest, Joe Fairless, who is the founder of Ashcroft Capital, host of the Best Ever Show, and author of the Best Ever Apartment Syndication book, and many other books that I consider to be the Bibles of apartment syndication. I have this book within arm's reach every day, and I reference it constantly. But Joe has acquired and managed over $2 billion in multifamily property across the U.S., and he actually started his career in advertising before moving full-time into real estate. And his journey offers just so many valuable lessons for anybody looking to grow in business and in life. And so I'll stop it there. But Joe, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks a lot, Corey. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. And so if you wouldn't mind just expanding and introducing yourself and expanding on your background and kind of just bring us up to date from beginning to now.
Sure. So I'm a fellow Red Raider, and we got a big game this weekend. Looking forward to seeing Texas Tech beat the BYU Cougars.
Yes, and we do. College game day.
Hopefully
we'll edit it out. This isn't going until till next week or 2 weeks from now. So we'll edit it
crossed.
For how it goes.
Fingers crossed I didn't just jinx us. Yeah, so I graduated from Texas Tech, moved to New York City right out of college, didn't know anyone, was making $30,000 a year, had about $18,000 worth of student debt. So I needed to, grind it out. Lived in East Flatbush, Brooklyn for a year, and then moved to East Village, kept my living expenses relatively low as I was climbing the corporate ladder in advertising. And my friends would make fun of me. They'd say, you're still living with, I had a roommate for 9 out of 10 years. The first year I didn't because I didn't know anyone. Years 2 through 10 I did. And my friends would be, getting a studio apartment and not having a roommate, or they get a 1-bedroom apartment and really live large. And I still had Craigslist roommates, and they would make fun of me. But what I was doing, I was saving my money, and I was buying single family homes in Texas and DFW. And the first one I bought, I saved up $20,000 to buy it. This was in 2009. I believe. 2009. And I bought it for $76,000 down payment and all in cost about $20,000. And it was in Duncanville, Texas, just south of Dallas. Then a year later, I bought another, a year later, another, and a year later, one more. I ended up with 4. And it was a good business model, especially on paper. But in reality, it was good for appreciation, just not cash flow, because on paper, I would be making about $250 a month per house. But in reality, when someone would move out, there's about $2,000-$3,000 worth of expenses that you have to incur to get someone to move back in to fix it up, and the cash flow just gets wiped out. So I realized the name of the game was to keep the residents, keep the tenants in the homes as long as possible, and then just cash flow, and then hope for some appreciation, which I wasn't a real big fan of that business model as I got into it. But while I was in the middle of it, I started teaching people how to do it, because in New York, as my friends would say, well, you work with me. We work crazy hours, 9 to 9, 9 a.m., 9 p.m. to 9 p.m. How are you a landlord? And so I told them what I was doing. I had a property management company. I didn't even visit the homes before I bought them, and they were shocked by that. So I taught a class on the weekends and in the evenings when I wasn't working late. And then my boss, or my former boss at the time, said, this is interesting, but if you ever do something larger, let me know. And that's when I realized that I had a customer before I had a product. I had an investor before I had something large for him to invest in. And that's when I also realized that the properties weren't cash flowing the way I wanted with the 4 single family homes. And I wasn't going to be able to scale that in a material way unless I brought on investors or changed the model. So that's when I started looking at apartment buildings.
And so how did you even discover that you could get into the commercial real estate space, the larger apartment space, coming from single family? Because people tend to get, if they don't know or get introduced to it by somebody else, it's definitely not a well-known thing. Maybe more now, but 5-10 years ago, it really was not a very publicized space, and it was something you kind of had to know somebody to get into. I didn't even find out about commercial real estate until halfway through my junior year in college. And so what was kind of your exposure to that and opening your mind to this investment avenue?
There weren't the podcasts around that there are today. There were books, and there were a handful of podcasts, but it wasn't focused on multifamily or commercial real estate, at least the ones I came across. Certainly there are books focused on commercial real estate, but I don't know if there are any books focused on syndication. And that's why I wrote the book on apartment syndication. So that there's that puppy. Yeah, I'm proud of that book.
It's very well written.
Yeah, I'm real proud of that book. That is my life's journey up until that point when I wrote that book with Theo, and it's a step-by-step playbook for how to do apartment syndications from scratch. How I learned is I read the books that were out there, which is apartment books. There were some apartment books, just not syndication books. So for example, Investing for Dummies. I read Investing for Dummies, and then I think I read another dummies book. I read a lot of books, but I'd reach out to the authors. After I read the books, I'd reach out to all the authors. And I ended up, while I had my full-time job, I ended up hiring one of the authors to be my consultant and teach me the business. And that helped, he helped guide me to learn the business, get some connections. And he actually introduced me to the first apartment community that I took control over. We didn't even buy it. It was a master lease with option to purchase. And I needed to do that on the first one because I didn't have the balance sheet. I didn't have the down payment. So I needed to do creative financing. And it was a creative financing on a 168 unit apartment community.
Yeah, and you finding that deal and being, how did you even learn? Was it from this mentor how to execute that type of an acquisition? Because that's not your run of the mill type of acquisition by any means.
I thought I had learned enough for that transaction, but the deal was a disaster. But I was able to get it to the finish line, close it, and then oversee it from 2013 to 2016. So we had it for 3 long years, but I made every mistake in the book on that deal, and it was quite challenging. So how did I learn? Well, I learned through the consulting from that one gentleman, but I also learned through books, but I didn't learn enough going into it. It was just too big of a jump from owning 4 single family homes, having an advertising background, not a finance background like you, but an advertising background, and thinking that this was going to be just like another single family home project where the property management company would just take it and run with it. And then the profits that I made from it, I would invest back into the property to renovate, just like I did my single family homes. Didn't work that way, especially when, day one or I'd say month one, I realized that my 97% occupied property is actually 68% economic occupied, and it's problems right at the beginning. So lots of mistakes on that one, lots of lessons learned. A big one that I learned is that I'm good at certain things and I'm not good at other things. And when you are competing at the highest level, in this case, commercial real estate, it's not every aspect of real estate has different tiers and there's different degrees of difficulty. I would argue that commercial real estate has more seasoned and well-funded people than residential. So that when you're in commercial real estate, you're competing against more seasoned and well-funded individuals compared to if you're going after fix and flip single family homes. And I realized that I was competing with those individuals, but I had no talent or expertise to match up to them at that point. I realized that, hey, if I'm going to do this business, the business model works, but if I'm going to do it, I need to partner with someone who has the experience that I do not have. Otherwise, I will get the same results that I got before on the first deal. And that's what I did. I found a business partner through a mutual friend and we formed Ashcroft. And then we were off and running and we had complementary skill sets. So that was necessary for us to get off the ground and have the start that we had.
Yeah, and I really love that story. That first act with that first jump, that first big deal, and you saying that and just being vulnerable about it. It did not go well. It was a battle, and you got it across the finish line. But there's a lot of things that you did have, and that was connections. You had that drive. You had the grit. You were constantly looking at okay, what is working, what's not working, and there's a lot of those skills that no matter what your level of experience is, as long as you have the vision and the passion and the wherewithal to just keep pushing it forward and to not give up, because that's really the biggest thing that separates people, especially in the real estate investing arena. Because I feel if you're not really into this, you don't really believe in it. You have to really believe in it and really be passionate about it in order for it to work, because it's a labor and it's a labor of love. And I don't think if you're kind of half into it, you can do it. You have to be able to ride the ups and the downs and be able to take the punches and over budgets and legal issues and everything under the sun that comes up. This is something that you really have to dive headfirst into. And you saying, one of the biggest things in hindsight was it was too big of a jump at that time, going from a handful of single family properties to a 168 unit deal.
Mm-hmm.
Do you still believe that to be true? And if so, kind of how do you feel about it now in hindsight?
Oh, absolutely. It was too big of a jump. With most things that happen to people that are challenging, if you look back on it and you ask them, would you do it again? They'd say yes, because that's what got me to where I'm at. But if I were how I like to think of it, because I too have a podcast and I ask a similar question. How I like to think of it is if right now, today, if I'm presented an opportunity that X's the type of portfolio we're used to buying, would I do it? No. No, I wouldn't. I learned from that first one that it needs to come in stages to do it the right way. And if you skip 7 stages, then that's just too much risk. So
Sure.
I've learned the lesson. I'm glad I went through it. I'm glad I did it. What a crazy experience. I moved into the I moved into the model unit from New York City, moved to Cincinnati, moved into the model unit, showed the model unit, walked up. So I'd wake up every morning, walk to the leasing office. I'd pack up all my stuff in the model unit, then walk up to the leasing office, then walk back to the model unit with a prospective resident and show that model unit where I'd just gotten out of bed. And then in the evenings, I would take my Toyota Corolla and take it to Home Depot and get asphalt filler and put it in the trunk of my Corolla and then put asphalt filler into the potholes in the property and get fix vacuum cleaners, and go to vacuum repair shops for getting the units cleaned and painting on the wall. Like I was so hands-on. But what I realized is sometimes you can be despite your effort, your best effort, some challenges are too big for your best effort. And you just gotta, take the lesson and then learn from it and get better.
Exactly. Hey, sometimes we bite off a little more than we can chew, but as long as we get through the dinner and we're ready for dessert, we can keep moving forward to the next one. But this story is actually perfect because we do have an audience submitted question, and this comes from Dawn, and it goes, Joe, I work full-time job, 9 to 5. I've got a couple of rental houses on the side. I dream of scaling up to apartment syndications like you did. What advice would you give someone in my position to make that leap into larger commercial deals? And how can I start moving from being a small landlord to doing big investments with partners?
Don, you sounds like this very similar background that I had, full-time job. And at one point I had 2 single family homes. I mean, what I did is I read books and I reached out to the authors and I took classes and then I started teaching. I think that's a key part. I started teaching others what I was doing. And then by teaching others, it reinforced the material. In this case, it was a single family homes. But then that's when I got my first investors from teaching them what I was already doing. Now, I understand that I was single at the time with no family commitment, that I was at a stage in my life where I could have the weekends and I could have the evenings to help myself professionally. Not everyone's in that position. I don't know you, Don, so I'm not sure how old you are or what your personal situation is. That's what's worked for me. And perhaps pick and choose any aspect of that might fit your circumstance and then apply it and you might get similar results.
Yeah, and I think that's just really solid advice for anybody at any stage in their life with any number of responsibilities. I mean, I've got your book. There's a bookcase over here that is 85% real estate, but I think I just buy every real estate book that anybody, worth listening to is recommended. And
Yep.
I've read it and learned those lessons. And it's true that, you really can. These are mentors in a sense because they're passing on all of the knowledge that you could ever want from taking somebody to coffee, and it's in a manual. Dude, this thing is not small either. This is an inch thick.
It was a labor of love.
This is a
Yeah.
good book. I mean, it's very well laid out, and so many of these other books are like that. But from going from the smaller deals and from that first big deal to now, you're overseeing a multi-billion-dollar apartment portfolio. How has your role and your mindset evolved from the days of doing those first few deals to now running what is a huge enterprise at this scale? What have you learned about leadership and growth through your evolution to where you are now with Ashcroft?
I mean, ultimately, it boils down to relationships, and it's long-term relationships with long-term people. And that's my favorite part of the business is getting to know our investors, getting to know our team members, adding value to their lives, and doing this for the long haul with them. So the evolution is in day-to-day stuff, but the constant is having that mindset and that mentality of just enjoying the people, because we all seek community, right? We all seek to belong, and this is something that if done right, then you'll be in it for the long haul with people. But there will be challenges. I mean, we have challenges. Uh, deals that with floating rate debt, capital calls, deals that lose money. We have challenges, and we will, as long as there's a business, there will continue to be challenges. It's about what do you do to course correct when those challenges come? How do you show up? And what do you do to learn from those challenges so that you mitigate them from taking place again, and you get better and stronger as a result of it, and you try to continue to build on the relationships that you have with people throughout it. When challenges come up, I realized I learned this in my first job in advertising. I had a boss. When a challenge came up, the boss was just he, instead of having it be an opportunity to grow together and be stronger, the boss picked apart people and dug in and was nitpicky on things and didn't help with the team morale. And I learned from that. I learned how not to approach things whenever times are tough. It's an opportunity. There's always an opportunity. And the opportunity is to get stronger together when times are tough, because you'll remember that. So those are those things, it's how we handle adversity. That first deal, it lost money, but I learned from it, and I made it right with investors. And I, uh, you know, learned that I was an issue. I was the issue with trying to do it all myself. So then I solved for that. Brought on a business partner who had those complementary skill sets. So it's all about how do you handle the challenges that come up. Depending on whatever stage you're in, there's always gonna be a different challenge. But it's about what's your mindset when those challenges do pop up? Is it what's great about this, or how can I use this? How can I use this to help me get stronger? Or is it this sucks. Let me just get through this, because that's just, one my favorite book when I was at Texas Tech, was The Road Less Traveled by Scott Peck. And in that book, the first sentence is life is difficult. And when we understand and embrace that life is supposed to be difficult, that's the way things are supposed to be, then we're not surprised when it is difficult, and we expect it. And since we expect it, we are ready to handle it. We might not be ready for that specific problem, but we're ready for a problem, and we expect problems because we know that they're here to help us grow.
Absolutely. And I mean, this is not if you don't want a lot of problems, there's plenty of jobs where you can have a lot less problems and still be involved in the industry or do whatever you want. I mean, when you go out and you want to be an investor and running the show and an entrepreneur, these are the problems that you ask for when you sign up. This is not, an overnight thing. This is not going to be an easy journey. It's going to have a lot of ups and downs. And so being able to, for me to be able to get on a platform and have people like you come in and give these tips and advice to educate the next generation and people who are already involved, I think is just so powerful. And you had mentioned, building relationships and the strength or the power of that. And I want to talk about that for just a minute more. When it comes to building relationships and raising capital, that's I believe one of the harder aspects of this industry and what we do. And so when it comes to building strong relationships, what's the number one tip for cultivating a network of investors and partners to go out and trust you, especially when you're starting out or even just, on a normal deal when you do have experience?
Listen well, go into a conversation with the goal of listening, have a couple talking points, but ultimately you go into listen. So whenever I have a conversation with a new prospective investor, I always ask, I usually ask this with any conversation, is what's the outcome? What's your ideal outcome for this conversation? And then they just share what they want to get out of it. And that's the best way to start a conversation, because you're catering it to them and you're listening to what they have to say and what they want to get out of the conversation. And then that helps you understand where they're at, where their mindset's at, where they're at financially or in their investing stage. So I think in this age of look at me here, I'm waving my arms. I'm on all these different platforms. I'm got my phone on me all the time. I'm videoing. There's not enough listening. There's not enough truly selfless listening and hearing what someone else wants to talk about and then reacting to that. I think that's ultimately something that will help people scale. It's a slow process, but it's a tried and true process. And if you apply that over a decade, then it's going to have a compounding effect. And Tony Robbins always says people overestimate what they can do in a year, but they underestimate what they can do in a decade. And I find that to be very true.
That's a good one. I haven't heard that, but that's very true. And I'm definitely guilty of that as well. And as we wrap up here, just a quick little lightning round of 3 questions, then we'll send you out. What's one daily habit that you absolutely cannot do without?
Every morning I wake up and I drink a liter of water with a scoop of wheatgrass. I've done that for, I don't know, like 15 years.
Wheatgrass. What's the power in wheatgrass?
It alkalizes your blood. We generally have an acidic diet. So it's like having the liter of water just, flushes you out when, things are stagnant when you're sleeping. And then the wheatgrass is like having a salad that alkalizes you in the morning.
Interesting. I'll have to look into that. Name a book other than your own or podcasts that you would recommend to investors?
I'm going to go with Road Less Traveled by Scott Peck.
The order that one. Like I said, I buy a lot of books that people recommend, so that'll be my next Amazon purchase. And then favorite thing to do when you're not working, how do you recharge on days off or when you get some time to yourself?
Just last night, I checked off a bucket list item. I have 3 bucket list items for the year, and last night I did the third. One bucket list item was create fire primitively. I did that this year. Another was participate in a chess tournament. I did that. And then last night was create a shelter from scratch and sleep in it overnight. And I live in Cincinnati. It's November. It's getting cold and I didn't want to wait any longer. Unfortunately for me, the low was 32 degrees last night. It was very cold and miserable, but I did it. So to answer your question, it's to get outside and do stuff in nature. I really enjoyed that.
I love that. Yeah, getting close to the Bear Grylls lifestyle, which is I think you're trying to shoot for. It makes me feel so much better. Just setting up a campfire. I really enjoy that, just getting out some fresh air. And then as we send you out, Joe, you host the best ever real estate podcast yourself, where you always ask others for their best advice. Now, I would like to flip the script on you and to close out our season. What is your best ever advice for our listeners as we end this season and wonderful day interviewing you?
Nothing has meaning until you decide to give it meaning. This conversation, any conversation that anyone hears, 10 people can hear that same exact conversation, and you'll have 10 different interpretations of that same conversation, because everyone has a different process of meaning that they associate to words that they hear. So we can decide the meaning that things give us and then act on it accordingly.
Joe, thank you so much for your time today and being a guest on my show. It really is an honor for me. Everybody, this has been Joe Fairless, and I'm your host, Corey Mortensen of the Mastering Commercial Real Estate Podcast, and we'll see you next season. Thank you. Well, that's a wrap for today's episode of the Mastering Commercial Real Estate Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, go ahead and give it a like, leave a review, or share it with a friend. It really helps us grow and reach more people who want to master this space. If you have any feedback or ideas to improve the show, reach out, leave a comment. I'm always looking to make it better and tell us what you like or didn't like. And don't forget, if you're ready to start investing passively and want to learn more about upcoming commercial real estate deals, head over to ONE-9 Holdings, that's 19 Holdings, and join the investor list. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you on the next episode.